Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know that the summer vacations are coming up, Memorial Day weekend is coming up, and everyone's got their mind elsewhere, but so I appreciate that you've come along tonight. I'm particularly enthusiastic about Jock's presentation because he's been incredibly generous and helpful in educating me personally, and I have to put my hand up and say that I haven't actually actioned what he's taught me, but I was really amazed because I always thought, I guess I had a big ego about social media. I thought I was like a real social media gal. I used to tell people, oh, I'm such a social media gal, early adopter. I was put to shame when I started talking with Jock, and he really, really opened my eyes about how I can actually increase my business and extend my networks and actually maybe get more people at these events. And it would only benefit me. So I am going to action it as soon as I can. And I'm sure that you're going to find the information tonight extremely valuable. So with that, I'm just going to introduce Jock, and I'll let him tell you a bit about his history.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pimo. Hey, very nice to meet all of you. Thanks for the applause. So my name is Jock Breitweiser, and like Pimo said, social selling and social media is a topic that is definitely near and dear to my heart. It's something that I have engaged with very intensely over the past 3 years or so, and I personally really have experienced a lot of impact through it, and just digging deeper into it, I realized that there's a whole side to social media that I had never realized. And it was about 3 years ago, like I said, where I took the opportunity to take a longer weekend, like Memorial Day weekend. And just before that, I had looked at my social accounts, and they really weren't doing much for me. So I had Twitter, I had LinkedIn, I had Facebook, and they just didn't really do much for me. And I said, okay, so why don't I just quit this and just let the accounts be and close them down? And the only thing that I told myself was to just give it another shot and see if I could modify how I had been using the accounts before. And I found that actually made a huge difference. So I started turning the screws a little bit because I was ready to give up on LinkedIn and Twitter anyhow. It didn't really matter that much to me, so I figured I might as well just break the system. And on the way to breaking it, I actually recognized a couple of things that worked really well. And then I started digging deeper into it, and in parallel, this whole topic of social selling came up, and I started following that very, very closely, and started looking into the people who did it. And I worked at the time for a company called TriNet in the HR space, so not necessarily a space that you immediately associate with the latest trends or social media or something like that. And that being said, though, my team and I at TriNet, we actually started then looking into how can we bring social media not just to the employee base, but also how can we actually help the sales team leverage social media for the sales process. And based on that, we developed a couple of workshops and classes, really breaking down the kind of system that you need to set up. And that's what I want to share with you guys today, because I really think when you hear many of the people in social selling talk, there's a lot of people who I think are extremely smart and probably a lot better personally, I think, than me at this. I think one of the things that falls a little bit short is just the ability to actually implement a system that actually allows you to do that on a regular basis and be successful with it. And I think that's one of the challenges that many people face. You heard Pimo, right? It's so you get the concept, but then the question is how do you implement that? And how do you make it work on a daily or weekly basis? Because you don't want to spend 10 hours a day, feeding your Twitter account. And so, I guess in order to be successful, the one thing that I would tell you right away, and then I'm going to dive into a little overview, is really, I think you have to sit back at some point when you decide that you want to use that. Think about what you want to get out of it. It could be personal, it could be business related. I don't think that really matters. But I think you have to be focused, and I think you have to be dedicated in terms of how much time you spend and when you do it. And I think one of the key, as with many things in life, is just consistency, right? You have to do it on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're gonna have peaks and valleys, and it's not really gonna yield much results for you. Does that make sense so far? So that being said, you know, the whole topic of social selling, I think, is really interesting, because you have obviously a change in how selling is being done, right? You have the old sales model, calls and demos and qualifying leads from events and all of that stuff. And when you look at this new sales model, it's different, right? It's working with social networks, it's educating the people that you want to tell the story of your product or your services to, and it's engaging with them. So what you want to do is you want to think about the reasons to do social selling. And you know, I found this year from another social selling guru, which I thought was pretty interesting. You know, I think number 2 here just tells you a lot of things, right? 79% more likely to attain your quota than people who don't use social selling. That's amazing, right? That's a crazy number, and there's a ton of others. You know, this is from LinkedIn. This is from Aberdeen, the analyst group, and I think those numbers are just incredibly powerful, right? So creating 45% more opportunities than your peers with a lower SSI, and I'm going to talk to you about SSI and what that means, but let's just use social selling for right now. Or, you know, more likely to reach your quota by 50%. Those are incredible numbers, right? And so the question now is, how do you actually go about implementing that into your sales cycle or into the process of getting the word about your product or your company out? And what I'm not advocating is an approach where I would say, you know, social media is the panacea. It's going to cure all your ailments, and it's going to be the silver bullet for your sales process. I don't think so. You know, I don't think cold calling is dead. I don't think, you know, you should stop sending out emails. I think social selling is a great tool that is that can serve as a great supplement to other sales elements that you already have in place and that you should be conducting in parallel. I think the reason for that has to do with the adoption. Some people are just not as savvy or as comfortable, and over time maybe they find, you know, that the social piece is not so much their thing. I've seen personally salespeople who actually were very, very skeptical in the beginning, and then decided after they saw first successes that this was really what they wanted to pursue, and they dropped everything else. I think both approaches are absolutely possible, but I think for the vast majority, social media and the use of it in the sales process is going to be supplemental. And so, you know, when you look at it, you look at your LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter as research tools, as initial engagement tools, but you still end up having conversations. You still end up sending emails and maybe having coffee with someone in the sales process. So what you need to do in order to get your social selling prowess going is the kind of plan where you really structure what you need to do. And in my mind, the 3 main steps are really to build your profile and establish your professional presence. You have to then think about how do you network and how do you engage with people, and how do you listen to the people that you want to talk to through social media? How do you leverage that as a tool? And then the probably most important component is the sharing of content, of opinions, engaging with the people that you want to talk to, because it's called social media after all, right? So how do you do all of these things? I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how that works and how you can hopefully make it work for yourself. So I'm going to focus for today on 2 of the main tools that I find usually very attractive for businesses, Twitter and LinkedIn. it really depends on the kind of business that you have. Instagram can be very effective as well. Snapchat, to me, is something that is a lot harder to quantify, so I'm a little bit more skeptical about that. That's not to say that it's not maybe a great tool to use, right? It's just from a perspective of the small business owner, medium-sized companies, I think Twitter and LinkedIn in concert are actually perfect. So I'm going to start with LinkedIn, and one of the things that you may have heard is that you have to have an optimized profile in order to really be successful. And it doesn't really take that much. It's not super complicated, but what you have to know is, on one hand, obviously you want to have a professional picture. You want to have something where you look good and where people can actually see your face. You don't want to have a picture of you on the beach, right? I think that's something that most people understand today. On LinkedIn in particular, you have this backdrop here, and when you go on LinkedIn and when you look at the profiles of the people, there are many people who don't use that, and that's huge real estate waste that is going on there. And if you have a business or if you have employees in your business, you should always use that real estate. There should be a backdrop and a cover photo that you share with your employees and that you use for yourself that speaks to your business, that maybe has a website address, maybe a phone number, maybe it's a QR code that people can scan, whatever it might be. Or you can put your Twitter handle there. But you definitely want to have something that speaks to how your business helps somebody, what your business does. It should be a visual that is related to the kind of business you have. And then probably most importantly, the headline. And this is really something that most people that I see fall short in. You want to talk about how you actually make a difference. Why should somebody be talking to you, and why is it relevant and helpful for you to connect with someone? So when somebody sees your profile, they should not be seeing I'm a director of XYZ at XYZ company, or my job is VP of sales. All of that is great, but it doesn't matter, because at this point when somebody opens up your profile, they want to understand, why should I even talk to you, and why should I be spending time with you? So that's a huge deal. And with the new LinkedIn profiles that have been rolled out over the past couple of months, what you also have been seeing probably is that now you only have 2 lines left to really make your profile interesting. And when somebody thought your headline here was interesting, then how do you actually get them to opening your profile and clicking on see more, right? So you have these 2 lines here, and I think this is a great example, right, where somebody says, check out my 12-week course and go here. Maybe there's some freebies in there or something that you can share, something to really make it easy for someone to say, I just want to check this out, I'm just going to click there, right? If you just talk about how awesome you are, or how you secured your own spot at President's Club last week, that's a great achievement, don't get me wrong, but it's not relevant to somebody who just wants to do business with you. Similar example from somebody who's actually in the social selling profession. And this one here, I picked just to show you the contact information, which is another important piece. You want to make sure that you always put all your contact information in there. You want to make it really easy for people to engage with you. And so you want to put your business website in there. You want to put your Twitter in there. If you want people to contact you over the phone, enter your phone number, right? So all of those things are really important, and they also contribute to your profile being ranked relatively high in LinkedIn's search engine. So when somebody looks for specific keywords and such, it's really important to have a complete profile, and LinkedIn rewards you by actually giving you higher visibility. So very important stuff, not super complicated, but definitely very relevant. Does it make sense? Do you have any questions on this? I think this is pretty self-explanatory, right? Make sure you look good, right? So I'm not even gonna go into any details, but definitely take a professional picture. And We're going to talk later about Twitter accounts, and I'm just going to say it here right now. When you have a great picture, use the same picture on all of your social profiles so that when somebody sees you on LinkedIn and then they come across your account on Twitter, they recognize you easily and vice versa. And so here's an interesting example, right? When you look at the headlines, very specific, right? So we have TEDs over here, and that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. I think this is relevant, right? It's what TED does. It's important, and at the same time, who would you rather talk to, right? When you look at these two profiles, and when you use your LinkedIn profile for engagement, I think for somebody to read, are you ready for double-digit growth? That's a headline that actually is attractive to me. That's where I want to be. I want to grow my business double-digit numbers, right? So I want to hear from Annette. In this case, that's my personal preference. I hope you feel the same way. Just some examples of what I think are really good headlines that I picked, just going through LinkedIn, and you recognize they all have something in common, right? They all speak about somebody who helps you create a better career, right? Lowering spending, they all talk to direct benefits that you want to experience as the person contacting this particular individual. Or here, this guy here, Brian Franklin, helped 8 companies reach 1 billion, right? So if you are a startup and if you're looking for capital, you probably want to be part of one of these 8 1 billion companies, or you want to be number 9 rather on his list. Being reachable is super important, like I just said. Definitely make sure that your profile is complete and that you enter your information. But my recommendation would actually be to go further than that, because in your summary, you have a great opportunity to actually make it very easy again for people to connect with you. And here are some examples that I think are really nice. Here's actually 2 people who are in the social selling business that I picked as examples. And this guy here not only has his contact information there, but he also makes a really compelling case why you should even be talking to him. So he talks a little bit about himself, about some of the clients he has been working with, and then about the business of social selling. Why does social selling even matter? So why is your business relevant? And then why his company? And then finally he says, if you have one of these 3 issues here, you definitely want to talk to me, right? And I think that's an extremely smart approach, because he gives the reader a direct impetus to say, yeah, I have one of these 3 issues. I probably should be talking to him, right? And same for this guy. So where you put your contact info is obviously your personal preference, whether you put it on top or down there, but I think it's a great opportunity to throw it into your summary of the profile again. And you see something else, you see these vertical lines, and you see little clouds over there. That's something that people play with sometimes on LinkedIn, and that's a personal preference, but it's an easy thing to make your profile stand out visually. And if you're comfortable with that, I definitely recommend playing around with that a little bit and seeing if that works for you. The company that you have or that you're working for probably also does Google Ads. And if you have a corporate LinkedIn profile, you probably want to use the same keywords also listed under specialties in your corporate LinkedIn profile, so that you optimize also again for the same keywords that you already pay Google for. But when you are an employee or when you are part of a smaller team, it's always a great idea to also, again, leverage the power of the Google Ads that you already have invested in and use the same kinds of keywords also in your summary. So just an easy thing to insert and make sure your profile is relevant. So the other part is growing your network. Now you're all set. You have your profile good to go. It looks attractive. You look great. You have a nice picture. Now, one of the most important parts of social selling is how do you actually go about engaging with people. And to me personally, LinkedIn had always been something where I connected with the people that were important to me, that because I had met them directly at a conference or something like that. We had shaken hands, we had a conversation, and at that point, a couple of years ago, when I revisited my approach to it, I figured, you know what, maybe I just need to completely change my approach. And so I did, and went from what I just described, essentially using LinkedIn as my extended address book, really turning that around 180 degrees and being a lot more open to connecting with people that I had not met. And the reasoning behind that was, for me, that on one hand, I wanted to have a bigger megaphone, so to speak. You know, I wanted to have a bigger audience to talk to. And the other aspect of it was that I believe in a theory that has to do with strong links and weak links. And weak links in that theory are people that have little overlap with the circle of friends that you have, with the areas of interest that you have. And whereas obviously the strong links are the people that are, when you think of a Venn diagram, it's almost 100% overlap, right? Maybe it's 80% overlap, and the weak links are maybe only 20% overlap. Now, when you think about the area you can cover with two circles that overlap only a little bit, it's a lot bigger, right? And so I really believe that when you engage with people that hear different things, are exposed to very, very different parts of society, are participating in different events, those are the people that you will hear from about business opportunities, about opportunities for your personal growth, much more likely than the people that are already at the same events than you are, right? Because they tap into the same or similar networks. And so both of these reasons that I just mentioned were really huge drivers for me to be a lot more aggressive in building my network. And it has made a huge difference in terms of the people that I did connect with, but also in terms of the people that actually ended up seeing my profile. And that's one other aspect that I think you want to reach as a business owner or as an individual. You want to make sure that your profile and your qualifications actually are visible to as many people as possible. All right? So that's something to think about. And so being visible is super important. There's a couple of people who still have their profile settings on invisible, because that way, you know, when you go on somebody's profile, they don't see who actually went there, and you know, it's very anonymous. For the purpose of networking on LinkedIn, it's completely useless when you do that. And so you definitely want to have your elements, the elements of your profile visible. You want to have your profile visible itself. The only thing that I would say you should probably keep invisible is there's a little button that you can activate where it says update my network when I change my profile. And especially when you optimize your profile and when you make changes, you know, as you adjust your summary and so on, you don't want your profile, you don't want your network to get an update on every little change every time. And also, most of these changes are not really relevant. So that's something that is something that I would probably recommend deactivating. But other than that, be visible. You know, have your visibility settings essentially set to maximum, and show the connections that you are connected with, because that's part of what networking is all about. So definitely do that. The connections on LinkedIn, again, are a key part, right? And there's a number of different ways how you can grow your network on LinkedIn. And obviously you can tap into your school or into former colleagues that you worked with. There's a great section on LinkedIn that is about people that you may know, where LinkedIn suggests contacts that you should be connecting with. And you can be extremely targeted in your search. So you can look by cities, you can look by zip codes, current or former employers, and you can look by titles. So that is something that I've done extensively, where, you know, just based on the people that I wanted to connect with, based on specific industries, I proactively reached out to people that I felt I could learn from, that would be great connection to help me in my professional growth. and also for personal business growth. So that is definitely always a great idea to do. What I don't recommend you do is don't click on this connect button here that you see, because when you do that, that individual gets a standard LinkedIn invite. And that is something that I absolutely recommend against. You don't want to do that. Make sure that you always send a personalized invite, because otherwise you just go, you fall into the same kind of bucket that another 150 people fall when they reach out to someone, right? It's anonymous, and there's no personal aspect to it. You just send, I would like to add you to my LinkedIn network, thanks, John, and that's not really a great start for a meaningful relationship. So you want to have a sentence or two that are personalized, and so what you want to do is you want to click on the name here, and then once their profile opens up, then click on the connect button, and then you have an opportunity to actually add a line or two to the invite. So always do that, because otherwise you're really just gonna be forgotten. I have probably 250 invites sitting in my inbox just waiting there, and I go through it every day diligently, and I connect with the people that take the time to really send me a personalized invite, and the other ones I do when I get to it. And I know a lot of people who do exactly the same thing, so definitely recommend that. Turning viewers into profiles, turning viewers of your profile into connections is something that I've also started a long time ago. And so I go through the people that look at my profile, and the ones that are not first-degree connections but second-degree, those I actually reach out to and say, hey, you checked out my profile, thanks for doing this, and would love to connect. Or something similar to that effect, but again, a personalized invite, and that's how I typically start an engagement with someone, and then after they then connect with me, then I take the next step and maybe send a follow-up connection and a follow-up message. So that's something that I think you should be doing, because those people have already shown interest in your profile, right? That is part of why you build out your profile. That's part of why you create this great headline and this great summary to get people to view your profile. And so when they come, you definitely want to make sure that you capitalize on that, and you definitely want to make sure that you reach out to them and don't just let them sit there. Make sense? Duck Soup is an interesting tool. I don't know if you've come across that by any chance. That's something that falls into the category of tools that I've been deploying over the years, where I looked at how do I actually want to run my social media strategy, and how do I engage with social. And I've come to the conclusion there's some things that I want to do manually that are important to me, where I want to really put time in to actually create a personal piece of content, or where I engage with somebody personally. But then there's also elements that I find you can easily automate and still generate comparable or same results. Duck Soup is one of these automation tools. It's a Chrome browser plugin that actually does something for you that's pretty interesting. So you use it in Chrome, and in Chrome you go on LinkedIn. You run a LinkedIn search for whatever keyword it is that you want, maybe CMO as a title, or specific industry, or specific keywords that are relevant for you, and then it spits, obviously, as usual, LinkedIn spits out a number of profiles, and then you click on the LinkedIn, on the Chrome browser plugin for Duck Soup, and you click Visit Profiles, and that's exactly what Duck Soup does. So it starts a process where it automatically visits, in the free version, up to 100 profiles. And what happens then is kind of reverse psychology. So you have this wonderful built profile, with a finely tuned headline, with a description of what it is that you do, and the people who then end up seeing that you visited their profile, they read that headline, right? They get a snapshot, they get this preview, just like I showed you a second ago, who viewed my profile. And they then think, hopefully, if your profile is attractive and a match for what they do and what they look for, wow, that's really interesting. I should be visiting John. So they come to your profile, right? And that's one way how you actually want to make sure that you really engage with the people that come to your profile, because you work hard for these people, right? And they have an interest. They've seen that you visited their profile and they've taken the time to come back. So that's somebody in the sales process that you would call a hand raiser, right? It's somebody who has shown interest, and you want to make sure that you engage with those people in order to reward that and take the conversation further. Does that make sense? So growing your network can obviously be done in multiple ways. And when you look at Boolean search, that's a fantastic way to actually combine specific keywords or attributes that you want to go for when you look to expand your customer base or the people that you want to engage with. And like I said, you can look by job titles, you can look by zip codes, or you can look by specific people profiles. Many different ways how you can actually vary this kind of approach to searching for the people that you eventually want to engage with. In the LinkedIn universe, one of the things that I believe is really vastly underestimated and underappreciated is groups. And groups are fantastic for multiple reasons. One of them has to do with the fact that you can actually use groups to become member of the groups in order to be able to communicate directly with people. And obviously being able to reach out to and communicating directly with people is exactly what LinkedIn is all about, right? You connect with people that are having the same interests or similar interests to yours, and you get an opportunity through that platform to speak to them. So by being in the same group as somebody else, you actually have an opportunity to speak to them directly. One of the things you can do, for instance, is then to optimize not only by topics, as you would naturally do, so by whatever topic is relevant for your business, but you can also think about maybe there are groups that have not just 10 or 15,000 members. Maybe there are groups that have a much larger number of members, right? There are LinkedIn groups out there who have over 1 million members. And so, if you can become a member of 100 groups total, and if you think about building yourself a bigger megaphone for your business, then that is a fantastic way to actually allowing yourself to communicate directly with a lot of people. Other than that, the groups are also a terrific tool to share the content of your company or of the product or services that you have to offer. The only caution I would throw in there, though, is that it's really important not to come across as too salesy. The groups are incredibly helpful, and the people in there are really spending a lot of time talking about topics that matter to them. And if you come in there and just essentially use it as a way to shove a message down somebody's throat, it's not appreciated. And you may either get blocked from that group or maybe you get yelled at. But I definitely don't recommend that. So what you want to do is you want to engage through meaningful content or through thoughtful questions, or maybe by commenting on somebody else's posts. That's a great way to actually find like-minded people who really have an interest in a specific topic. So, when you do that, again, turn off your sales instincts. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about, just like you did in your profile, what kind of value you add to the conversation, and that's how you start the engagement with people over there. Once you have had an opportunity to speak to someone in a group about a topic, maybe the conversation went back and forth 2 or 3 times, then that's a great way of taking it offline. And similarly to that, when you connect with someone on LinkedIn and they accept your invite after you send it to them, don't just make the next email or the next message to them directly a sales pitch, right? Never do that. It's a huge turnoff and it's incredibly ineffective. So what you want to do is you want to really understand where somebody stands, what they're looking for, how you can help them, and what you have in common before you actually start in a typical sales conversation. So be very mindful of that. And then brings me to communicating on LinkedIn. One of the great things about LinkedIn is you can follow the people that what they actually do, and not only can you see which profiles they visited, right, but you can also see what kind of information they shared. So when you look at what somebody is talking about, you can see somebody's activity. You can see what kind of articles they shared, what kind of articles they liked, what kind of articles they posted themselves. And those are really great ways for you to do a little bit of more research and understand what somebody is all about. And at the end of the day, you want to be super targeted, right? If you just go into LinkedIn or into any social platform and you just blast and spray a message out, that's really not the way to do it. You want to be targeted and you want to be successful. You want to be meaningful and purposeful in the kind of conversation and engagement that you have. So take the time to do some research and understand, what activities has somebody, what articles has somebody shared, right? Or what have they liked, right? It's really easy to do, and it gives you a great starting point for a conversation. I talked about the personalized way of communicating. So after you have done that kind of research, what you want to do next is you want to reach out to them. And I understand how difficult and time-consuming it can be. So maybe a little bit shortcut could be to do something like this, right? Where you create sort of templates for yourself that are either maybe saved on your desktop, on a Word document, and that are tailored to specific situations. So when you meet somebody for the first time or after you meet them, maybe you have created a template for a follow-up after a trade show, or maybe somebody visited your profile and you want to engage with them like we talked about earlier, then maybe you create a sort of template for that kind of instance. I think what I would recommend is definitely using something like that because it's hugely effective. You can have your signature underneath, so you don't have to always type your email address and phone number every time anew. But what I also want to caution you is to just use that as a starting point, right? Use that as a time saver that gets you started very quickly, and then modify a sentence or two, but at the same time, still be personal and be specific to the situation where you met somebody or why you actually engage with them. Some of the pieces on LinkedIn and on social media in particular are really heavily focused on research and understanding what the other person is about. And the nature of social media is obviously built in a way that research is incredibly easy and incredibly effective and fast because of all the information being public already. And so some of the tools that are out there really allow you to gain extremely deep insight into somebody's personality or their behavior. And I picked two for you tonight. One is Charlie app, which is a great tool to get sort of a dossier on somebody's social media activity. And you can see here, for example, it gives you a brief summary of where somebody works, and then what maybe the news about that company is, and tells you a little bit about the company itself, how many employees it has, and so on. Some other tool that I think is absolutely amazing is called Crystal Knows. And Crystal actually is a tool that allows you to search somebody, and it's an AI enhanced scraping tool that leverages information that it finds online, and then gives you not just an assessment of the psychological profile of that person, but it also gives you very, very specific ideas of how to engage with someone. So you see the example here It tells you keywords and phrases to use when you speak to someone. It gives you very specific instructions of how to actually email an individual. Crystal also has a Chrome browser plugin. So when you do that, or when you use that, and you send an email out of your Gmail to David in this case, then Crystal will automatically give you real-time advice on how to change your email so that it actually maps back to the profile of that person. It also has a beautiful drop-down menu with, I think, around 15 or so different opportunities how you can, or 15 different templates specific to that kind of psychological profile for someone. So when you want to do a follow-up after a meeting, or when you want to ask somebody for additional piece of information, there's very likely already a template in there that fits exactly for David. So amazing, scary, and really creepy tool that I can highly recommend. I wanted to show you, to wrap up with LinkedIn, a couple of things that hopefully get you started and get you thinking about what the purpose of connecting is on LinkedIn, and why there's really always a reason and a way to connect. Whether it's somebody sharing a blog post or somebody's endorsing you for a skill, right? You should really think about the reasons why you could be reaching out to someone, and don't be shy about doing it. People love to connect on LinkedIn. That's why they're there. And so I definitely recommend being very proactive about opportunities and leveraging them as much as you can. Things that I recommend for you to do have to do with your profile. Obviously, get that done. That's really key. And start using the LinkedIn groups, and also start creating those kind of templates, because they get you over the hump and really make it easy for you to engage. And finally, identify and connect with 5 prospects that you think you want to have a conversation with, so that you just get into the habit of using LinkedIn for that purpose, and apply the things that we talked about. On Twitter, some of the things very similar, I figure, yeah. Not picking on somebody in particular, but so Ted was also an example for a LinkedIn profile, right? And so I picked him because it's an interesting profile that he has on LinkedIn and on Twitter, right? Very different. And so depending on how you're using social media as a medium and with a purpose, it really depends on what you want to optimize for. So Ted here has not been using the same picture on both profiles, right? Something that I think if you use it professionally, I would definitely recommend. So that's something to look into. Also, again, just talking about the title, that really doesn't say much, right? It doesn't say anything about his character, which I'm sure he has. And I'm just looking at him. I'm sure there's a lot of stories and a lot of hobbies, but I don't get anything about that kind of person, right? I don't understand what he's all about. I don't understand what he does really, and why I should be connecting with him. So I think there's some missed opportunities there. You could also use that kind of short bio on Twitter, maybe to integrate your LinkedIn link to your own profile, right? So that you connect between the two profiles, just like you have your Twitter handle under the connects information in LinkedIn. You could include your LinkedIn link over here. The other thing, again, that's a lot of white or blue unused space. Don't do that. So I'm not going to pick on Ted any longer, but I just thought it was a really good example. So Twitter tips. One thing that I like to do a lot is to cross-reference the people between different profiles. So looking at who followed me on Twitter, and then connect with those people on LinkedIn, and vice versa as well. And beyond that, really, identifying not just companies that I'm interested in, but also the individuals behind them, because that's especially on LinkedIn what you find, right? You find a lot of personal opinion, whereas on LinkedIn, many people will have much more of a professional demeanor. On LinkedIn, on Twitter, you will find usually people, posting things that relate much more to their lives. And that's why Twitter is a fantastic tool to actually understand what somebody is really all about, and then taking the conversation from there, maybe by adding information from what you can glean from LinkedIn. So definitely do that, and use Twitter as a sales tool and understand what companies or individuals are telling you. Much like the 30 reasons to connect on LinkedIn that I just gave you, when you look at somebody's Twitter stream, so for example here, somebody's speaking at a conference, right? So that's a terrific opportunity for you to, when you are at this conference, to tweet back either at the organization or at the individual, or maybe at both, and say, hey, I just visited or just attended your speech, would love to engage and learn more about XYZ. Terrific, right? You can poke fun at competitors, right? There's nothing is really nothing's really off. How do you say in English? Nothing's really off limits, right? So you can. Sorry. So you can poke fun at a competitor or maybe at an individual. Be gentle, right? Especially when you're dealing with individuals, because humor does not always translate so well when you see it in writing and when you don't have a facial expression. Or you use maybe financial updates from a company to say, hey, you guys just got funding or had an amazing quarter. How about you looking into our solution for XYZ, right? Might be a good time for you to help you drive your business further. Similar to what I showed you on LinkedIn, updating your profile, identifying and following prospects, and really following their stream and seeing what they're all about, and creating customized direct messages, so DMs, to invite and connect on LinkedIn rather than just talking on Twitter. Great ways to really expand your network on Twitter, and have Twitter and LinkedIn work for you in concert. And then wanted to share a couple of tools with you. So I already showed you Charlie and Crystal. One of the ones that I really like a lot is BuzzSumo. Fantastic tool that helps you identify trends and influencers in specific industries and allows you to see what kind of topics and themes are relevant for specific platforms and networks. From a content marketing perspective, LinkedIn Elevate is a great tool to help you share content together with your team and through your partners. And in a content marketing perspective, actually, I'm sorry, I mistyped. So from a sales engagement perspective, 360 Social Me, similar to Crystal, but gives you a very different viewpoint on how somebody engages on social. Shows you what kind of platforms they're most engaged with. And so, for example, if you see on 360 Social Me, somebody is on LinkedIn every now and then, but on Twitter for mobile, which is what is going to show up there, for example, then you always reach that person on their cell phone, right? So what does that tell you about the kind of content that you want to share with them? And last but not least, one of the things that you can use to identify how good you're doing on social is something that LinkedIn has come up with. It's called the SSI, Social Selling Index, and it's a great way for you to get just one simple number that is accumulated or calculated by LinkedIn to give you an idea about how well you're doing in different categories in networking on LinkedIn. Now, it doesn't cover Twitter or any other of your social profiles, But I would say by extension, if you're great on LinkedIn, it's probably safe to assume that you're also very busy on Twitter. And it just shows you nice trending average of how you're doing. And so for LinkedIn, for example, in the social selling index, when you're in the 30s or 40s, then you definitely have some work to do. But the good news is, like I told Pimo, when we talked about the topic, those are numbers that are relatively easy to influence, by being active on a regular basis and by deploying some of the tools that I shared with you, like BuzzSumo, that helps you stage content and identify relevant content, by thinking about the connecting and engagement piece that we talked about. Those numbers can go up relatively quickly by double digits even. And that is what you want to see. So you want to be in the 70s to 80s somewhere. That really gives you a good sense for an ability to connect on LinkedIn and social in general, to help to really leverage social media as a selling tool and for the best and for the purpose of your business. So that being said, just wrapping it up and bringing it home, from building your profiles to networking to sharing content, lots of things to do. If you have any questions, happy to help you. And yeah, I hope that was interesting and helpful for you. Thanks.
It's sort of like SEO for people, right?
It is, exactly.
So now we've got 10 minutes, and I would thoroughly recommend you ask him questions and get as much information as you want out of him.
So what do you think of Facebook? How does it compare to LinkedIn?
So the question is, how does Facebook compare to LinkedIn and Twitter? And I think Facebook is a tremendously valuable tool for social selling. I just didn't touch on it because I think I wanted to compress a little bit and focus on two things rather than go too broad. I would say much like LinkedIn, Facebook has a very specific profile of what people are looking for, and for some business, I think it can be fantastic. So, for example, for real estate, is a business that I know is very heavily engaged on Facebook, right? So you can share content that is a lot more visual, but you can also use language that is a lot more colloquial than what you would do maybe on LinkedIn. I think the challenge with Facebook is that you have to be very personal, right? So I don't think it lends itself really necessarily for B2B applications as much. But if you're in a B2C kind of business environment, then Facebook is actually a fantastic platform to use. And there's a lot of specific things that you can do with regards to audience segmentation, much like we talked about for LinkedIn, where you can be very specific, where you can use Facebook ads, where you can do beautiful things with retargeting. So it can be definitely a very effective tool. Happy to talk more offline if you like.
I want to apologize for sending a generic connect notice, because I tried to send one, and you don't have a choice on the iPhone or the iPad.
Yeah, you do.
Okay,
Yeah.
I paid attention to what you said, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I need special counseling.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Okay, it is possible to do that.
Yeah. So on the mobile,
To the profile.
I know what you mean. Yeah. It's not immediately obvious in the mobile app when you look on LinkedIn. In the profile, in the upper right hand corner, there's 3 dots, and when you click on those, then it says Personalize Invite.
Okay. Because I
Yeah.
know when I'm sitting at my desk and I
Yeah.
don't know my desktop,
But
the interface is different, and it does make it self-evident to send.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay, thank
you're
you
right.
very much. That was worth the trip.
My pleasure. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to know what you think about when you're building a personal presence on LinkedIn against maybe a company presence. What do you think it would be, we don't have time now, but the most difference you have to take care about when you're building a company presence against a personal presence?
Mm.
It's kind of big question.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do you think about the difference you have to do? Because as you said, in Facebook it's more like personal, but at the same time, in LinkedIn you are branding yourself,
Yeah.
but at the same time, maybe you are part of the company, or for example, I'm part of a startup and I want to brand my startup, but myself at the same time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of messy.
Actually,
what do you think about
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I would say so. Generally, it depends really a little bit on the specifics of the situation, right? But I think in general, just to say that, I think you can build a great corporate presence on LinkedIn, and have a great corporate site, and then use your employee base and work with your team to help tie people back to that corporate presence, right? And I think what you need to do in order to achieve that is you need to work with your team really in a methodical kind of way, to help them have the right kind of content that speaks to your business on one hand, and then every now and then people will want to say, oh, this person works at this and this company, and then obviously it's clickable because you have a corporate profile, right? So I think you definitely also want to share news maybe from your company, and materials from your company that speak to the services and to the benefits of why you're in business. And that, again, even for the corporation, is somewhat similar to what I would recommend for individuals, right? You want to make sure that people understand this is not just a company, and yes, they sell great products, but why do these products matter, right? So you have to think about that recipient kind of perspective, and you have to think about if somebody comes to my corporate LinkedIn presence, do they understand how they will actually benefit from my product or from my services? And again, then I would use maybe blog content or maybe articles that you see. I would share those on your corporate side to really help drive up the number of followers for your company. But in parallel, I also would work with your team to provide them those kinds of topical articles that they can sprinkle in, and that they really help drive the awareness for your corporate aspects as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure. All questions answered? Okay, I got a question for you. Was that helpful? Are you going to be able to do those 5 things and maybe build your profile and connect with 5 people, and maybe go a step further and maybe create a template? Is that something that is helpful to you? Is that something that you think you can do? The biggest challenge, I'm just going to say that as a closer, and then I'm going to let you go, but the biggest challenge is really to actually make it happen. None of the things that I showed you are super complicated. There's a lot of different things out there that you can do for social, and there's a new shiny toy out there every day, right? Which is really exciting, but I would really think about what are the 3 things that you need to do in order to get the right kind of content and the right kind of connections, and do that on a consistent basis. Don't go into 5 different platforms all at once and stretch yourself too thin. You're going to run out of steam very quickly. Rather, focus on 1 or 2 social platforms. Try to identify the right kind of content on a regular basis. Spend a week and try to schedule some of the content in advance. There are fantastic tools out there. Happy to share those as well. And get those things going. And that way, you're actually going to be able to slowly but surely make progress and see the number of your followers go up. And like I said, I also do those things on the side. You see the website down there. If you think I can help you, be more than happy to do that. So, let me know how it goes, and best of luck. See you online.
Thanks, Jock. And also, Jock's cards are up on the table there if you want to grab one before you leave, if you didn't get a chance to talk to him. Really appreciate all of that. I'm educated now. Also, I'd like to introduce Sean Flynn. a fellow Irish, got Irish genes like me. And he's going to talk a little bit about this wonderful accelerator. So over to you, Sean.
So thank you for the presentation. Learned a lot. I just want to make a few announcements on tech codes. So we're now starting to accept applicants for our next accelerator. Our idea is that it will start enrollment towards the end of June, possibly July. But right now we are accepting. It's not going to have a start and end date like the last one. It was 3 months before. This next one is going to be 6-month roll-in invitation. So if you know any startups in the AI area, please let us know. Email me or Ted. Ted had all his information up there today. Hope people were taking notes. We're also always looking for more mentors or businesses that can offer services or products to the startups in either our incubator or accelerator. If you'd like to do it locally, let us know, or if you're able to actually extend those services or products globally, we will advertise it to the other incubators. So just once again, thank everyone for coming to TechCode. If any of you have groups or meetups that would like to use our space here, please contact me as well. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Sean.